Ohio State is riding high off a 14-7 victory over the then number one team in America, the Texas Longhorns. Ohio State has now taken on the mantle as the number one team in America. And as team leader and star linebacker, I think one of the best defensive players on the Ohio State roster, Arvell Reese, said, the team hasn't really even been thinking about that or discussing that, which is the right place to be mentally. You never want to get in your own head that you're the best team in America and no one can stand up to you in the arrogant way. In the confident way, of course, you want that. But in the arrogant way, no. And the AP poll can often do that to teams. But that's not the topic of this video. The topic of this video is Ryan Day himself has said that this team needs to work on some things. I think everyone can objectively agree with that. So now that Ohio State is playing an inferior opponent in Grambling, not a Texas team, they can actually game plan against an inferior opponent and get in some reps for second and third stringers and try out some new things. That's what they can do now. There's no longer any angst or much pressure in a game against an opponent that Ryan Day could resign right before the game, 5 minutes before the game, and Ohio State would still win by 70 type of matchup. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Click the notification bell on the channel and the Ohio State football playlist that I have. And also hype the video. It's this weird YouTube feature, but apparently it's important for the algorithm. So do that. YouTube should direct you to be able to do that, especially if you're on a phone. And comment your thoughts down below. What do you want to see out of Ohio State against Grambling? There isn't a line out for this game yet, and it will probably be in the 40s when it is released. Let's look at some things that I think Ohio State needs to see out of itself against Grambling. I think first and foremost is trench dominance. This was the one area where I said in my preview that Texas would get Ohio State more so on the inside or in Ohio State's defensive line, not completely shutting down Texas's rushing offense or doing an elite job at that, or Ohio State not being able to run on the Texas front. How much of that is that Texas offensive line is big, well-disciplined, well-coached? How much of that is that Texas might have the best defense in America, could have the best rushing defense? We'll see this week. This week will be a test for that. And Ohio State's tackles did very well. That's not what I'm talking about here. I know Ohio State's tackles are great. I'm talking about how well do they run against Grambling? How well do they get down the field against Grambling's defensive front? What do they do in run defense against Grambling? And this is not just for the starters. This is for the second stringers, for the third stringers, to see players who may or may not need to be called upon as the season goes on, and you may or may not get hit with injuries, for example. Number two is downfield passing. We saw really just one of these plays against Texas. It was very understandable as to why Ohio State was in control, but I think more importantly, even if they weren't, I think that in Day and Hartline's mind, the opportunity cost of throwing it deep and possibly throwing a pick six to a Texas team that is just elite defensively just wasn't worth it. It wasn't. It was better to just grind it out and hope and believe that your defense and your receivers are good enough to score in the teens and hopefully restrict Texas to less than that. And that's exactly what happened. It was a wonderful game plan by Ohio State, wonderful execution. Now that you're playing Grambling, and look, I don't think Ohio State was hiding anything against Texas in the playbook. I just think that the game plan called for more of a basic conservative, let's go heavy on the ground offensively, and then defensively, you saw everything. Like, Patricia pulled out as much as he could. So now that you're not trying to hide things because you just played a big-time opponent and you're playing weaker teams, do we see them just try to get Sayin the ball more downfield to help him build confidence and chemistry with his receivers? Where they were dropping the ball a little bit, I don't think you'll see that for the rest of the year. Ohio State is the best receivers in all of America by a mile. And I will say I think that Keenan Bailey has some very damn good blocking tight ends myself. I thought they were the best run blockers out there on the field against Texas, which is very impressive, very much so. Number 3, the Buckeye special teams unit. We didn't see Jaden Fielding attempt a field goal in that matchup against the Longhorns, and punting was actually pretty good. I thought Joey McGuire did a good job. So, do we see more of that from the punter? Do we see Jaden Fielding hit a 50-yard field goal? Do we see Jackson Corville in the game? I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how the special teams unit looks. I know that Jeremiah Smith is getting looks at punt returner. Caleb Downs has gotten looks there before. We'll have to see how all that looks. I'm curious. I hope they don't put Jeremiah Smith back there in a game against Grambling, but that's beside the point. Number 4 is pass rush. Ohio State did get some pressure on Texas and Manning, some, but I don't think to the degree that last year's unit would have in terms of players and talent, not coaching staff or even scheme. I think that right now the best pass rushers for Ohio State outside of Kenyatta Jackson Jr. are probably Arvell Reese and maybe Sonny Styles. And Arvell Reese might already be a better pass rusher than Kenyatta Jackson because Reese is just that much of a freak. Regardless of that, having a game where Ohio State can show that its pass rush being somewhat restricted in last game was more so due to trying to contain Manning or due to the fact that Texas just has a better offensive line than maybe we expected would be very encouraging by showing up here and just immediately out of the gate getting pressure, sack, pressure, another sack, and just continually dominating what is a much weaker, less physical offensive line than what Texas had. And number 5 is about the backups. Bring in the backups. Ohio State has some of the best depth in America. They're very talented in the second string, in the third string. Get some reps, get some quality playing time, get them out on the field in the game day atmosphere, get them familiar with everything. And that's ultimately what you want. It's the same thing that I say with Oregon. It's the same thing that I say with Penn State in the Big Ten. It's the same thing I'm saying with Georgia and Texas here. Like, Ohio State has been in that top elite category. They still are there. And what you want to do with those teams is just get depth pieces playing time and rest your starters after they do what they need to do. So that way you can load manage, and as the season goes on, you can call upon your young guys if you need them, or your starters and bigger guys are well rested. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Again, make sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell. I know this was a preview against an FCS opponent, but I think that it is valuable to still look at things to pay attention to entering the smaller matchups and see what they do here. Because the elite teams, they win these games usually in a fashion that even just the good or great teams don't. And I think Ohio State is that, elite team. So we'll see how Saturday goes. I'll have a reaction video up for this matchup as soon as reasonably possible.